The morning sun slipped through the curtains, soft and golden, painting little dances of light across the kitchen tiles. I dropped my keys on the counter and set down my weekend bag, still smiling from my sister's hugs. Then I froze. 2 coffee cups sat on the table, both half full, one stained with red lipstick. My stomach twisted. Adam never drinks coffee before noon. The air felt too still, too aware, as if even the walls were holding their breath. I stepped closer, my fingers brushing against a silk scarf that didn't belong to me. Pale, perfumed, elegant, and entirely out of place in my home. My throat tightened. I whispered, almost afraid of my own voice. 2 cups. He doesn't even drink coffee before noon. I could smell something sweet lingering in the air, perfume mixed with guilt. For a moment I wished I could unsee it. Rewind 5 minutes. Go back to thinking everything was fine. But lies don't give you that luxury. Then came footsteps. His voice, startled, cracking through the silence. "You're back early." I turned, slow and steady. Apparently not early enough. He laughed, awkwardly, spinning some story about a coworker and a presentation. Midnight coffee and lipstick, apparently. I didn't respond. I just wiped the rim clean with a napkin, watching the red smear spread across the white fabric. Every lie leaves a stain, and this one was still warm. I didn't confront him right then. What was the point? He'd only deny, twist, and talk until the air itself gave up. Instead, I watched, the way his hands fidgeted, the way his eyes flickered to the table and back. He asked if I wanted breakfast, like everything was normal. I said no. My voice was calm, but my heart was pounding so loudly it felt like it might shake the cabinets. Silence can be sharper than shouting, and that morning it cut deep. He disappeared into the shower soon after, humming off-key. I stayed in the kitchen, tracing the edge of the coffee cup, memorizing the shade of that lipstick. Red, confident, careless. I opened the window to let in fresh air, but all I smelled was the ghost of her perfume. I thought about the nights he'd said he was working late, how often I'd believed him, how easily I'd brushed off the missing hours. Every excuse suddenly sounded different, louder, uglier, too rehearsed. When he came back dressed for the day, he kissed my cheek as if nothing had happened. His lips were warm, but his words were cold. "You should get some rest," he said. I nodded, pretending I might. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table long after he left, staring at the 2 empty cups, the one with lipstick, the one without. A perfect metaphor for us, one full of color, the other just pretending to be. The house felt heavier once he was gone, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets I hadn't been meant to hear. I walked through each room slowly, noticing things I'd never questioned before. An extra glass by the sink, the faint smell of her perfume clinging to his jacket. It wasn't rage that hit me first. It was humiliation. A cold, quiet kind of heartbreak that doesn't scream, it seeps. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling against the sheets we both once called ours. I replayed our last week in my head, the half-smiles, the distracted answers, the way his phone suddenly became an extra limb. Everything connected now, like puzzle pieces finally snapping into place. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was just late to the truth. And that realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. Because while he was rehearsing lies, I was still making him dinner, still believing we were fine. Love, it seemed, had made me the perfect audience. I went back to the kitchen, poured myself a new cup of coffee, and sat exactly where the other woman must have sat. The chair was still slightly turned toward his. I imagined her laugh, soft, rehearsed, maybe even pitiful. Then I took a sip, bitter and bold. It tasted like clarity. That's when I knew I wouldn't confront him yet. Not until I had proof. Not until every stain was visible. Because revenge, like coffee, should never be served cold. It needs to be brewed just right. I didn't bring it up again. Not that day, not that week. Pretending became a skill, one I never wanted but learned quickly. I smiled when he told stories about work, laughed when he made jokes that weren't funny anymore. He thought I was forgiving him for my imagination, but I was watching, carefully, quietly. Every late-night text, every new shirt, every cologne change became evidence. He had no idea that I was already collecting the truth, one detail at a time. At night, when the water ran in the shower and the mirror fogged up, I went through the trash bin. Once, twice, then again. That's when I found it. Another coffee cup. Rinsed but still betraying him with faint traces of red. That same shade. That same recklessness. I held it under the light, and for a second, my reflection stared back at me through the porcelain. Calm. Focused. It wasn't pain I felt anymore. It was precision. I took a photo, dated it, filed it away. Proof. I started tracking everything. The lies came wrapped in patterns. Thursday, meetings, Friday, deadlines. Always the same hours, always the same tone. I played my part perfectly, humming while I cooked, asking about his day, tucking in the corners of my suspicion like sheets on a hotel bed. Every word he said became another stitch in his own noose. And I smiled, because soon I wouldn't need to ask him anything at all. He'd tell me the truth himself, without even knowing it. One evening I called Claire. My voice sounded steadier than I expected, almost detached. 2 cups, I told her, 2 nights in a row, and perfume that isn't mine. There was a pause, heavy and cautious. Claire asked if I was sure. I laughed softly. I don't need to be sure, I said. The universe rarely repeats itself by accident. I could hear her breathing on the other end, unsure whether to comfort me or warn me. But I didn't need sympathy. I needed silence and strategy. That night, I watched Adam sleep. His face looked peaceful, almost boyish. Funny how guilt hides best in daylight. Under the soft hum of the ceiling fan, I whispered to myself, "Wait, he's building the rope." My chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate calm. I wanted to see how far he'd go, how deep he'd dig his own hole. Trust wasn't gone. It had simply changed shape. Now it was the rope he'd use to hang himself, woven from every lie he thought I couldn't see. The next morning, I made his favorite breakfast: pancakes, maple syrup, black coffee, 2 cups. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're sweet when you're not overthinking." I smiled back. It was almost poetic, watching him walk into his own trap while thanking me for it. I cleaned the table after he left, wiping every crumb, every trace. All except one, a single drop of syrup that clung to the edge. I left it there. A reminder that every mess, eventually, leaves evidence. Days turned into a quiet investigation. I didn't need detectives or drama, just patience. I started keeping a small notebook in my drawer, hidden under my scarves. Dates, times, places he mentioned, receipts I found in his jacket. He'd kiss me goodnight while my mind was already flipping through evidence. Sometimes I'd hear him texting in the bathroom, his laugh muffled behind the door. I'd wait until morning, until he forgot to delete something. The truth always leaves fingerprints. It just takes time for the light to hit them. By Friday, I had more than enough. Photos, mugs, patterns, a trail of perfume that lingered even after the windows were opened. Yet, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt awake, stronger. Every lie made me colder, sharper, like glass tempered by heat. I began to cook again, smile again, even suggest things like, Let's invite your coworkers for dinner next weekend. He looked relieved, even grateful. Poor man. He thought I was healing when I was only preparing. As I watched him leave for work that morning, his tie slightly crooked, I realized something profound. This wasn't about catching him anymore. It was about reclaiming control. I had been the woman waiting for explanations. Now, I was the one writing the story. When he smiled and said, "Don't wait up," I smiled back. Oh, I would wait, but not for him. I'd wait for the moment he'd hand me his own undoing, without even realizing it was already gift-wrapped in red lipstick. Saturday arrived cloaked in calm, the kind of day that fools you into thinking everything's fine. I told Adam I'd be out running errands, shopping, maybe lunch with Claire. He kissed my forehead distractedly, already thinking about his afternoon plans. I smiled, the kind that hides a storm behind it. As soon as he left, I grabbed my coat, circled the block, and parked my car across the street from our house. My heart was steady, my hands didn't shake. I was done being the unsuspecting wife. I waited. Hours stretched like years, the clock ticking louder than usual. At noon, a car pulled up, sleek, black, too polished to belong to someone just stopping by. I leaned forward. She stepped out like a scene rehearsed 1,000 times. Long hair, red lipstick, black coat. The same red I'd seen on the cup. The same red that had rewritten my marriage. She walked with confidence, the kind of arrogance only borrowed from deceit. And when Adam opened the door, his smile was pure, practiced betrayal. He kissed her. Not a hesitant, guilty peck, but a kiss of habit. I felt something in me close, like a door sealing shut from the inside. No tears, no trembling, just clarity. I raised my phone, took the photos I needed, each click a small release of power. They laughed. He let her in. The curtains shifted slightly, as if mocking me, but I didn't move. I sat there, hands on the steering wheel, breathing in the silence of final confirmation. Proof, at last, felt like peace. I stayed in that car longer than I should have, watching through the windshield as if I were observing strangers. Maybe that's what they were now. Strangers who used my kitchen, my table, my life. I could almost hear them laughing over those same cups. The irony stung, but also strengthened me. There's a kind of silence that doesn't break you. It builds you. In that stillness, I realized the most powerful response isn't fury, it's precision. And I was about to become very precise. When the clock neared 3, the woman finally left. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her coat, and walked away with the calm of someone who believed she'd gotten away with something. I waited until her car disappeared, then exhaled. My reflection in the mirror didn't look defeated. It looked deliberate. I drove off, circled the city aimlessly for an hour, just to let the plan settle into place. Revenge wasn't a thought anymore. It was a timeline. And I was already halfway through it. By the time I walked back through the front door that evening, the house smelled of lemon cleaner and denial. Adam looked up from the couch, startled but smiling. "How was your day?" he asked, his tone light. "Busy," I replied, matching his lie with ease. He didn't notice the faint trace of adrenaline in my voice. "Good," I added with a smile. "I made dinner reservations for tomorrow. Somewhere nice. My treat." He relaxed completely, mistaking composure for forgiveness. That was his favorite mistake. That night, I watched him move around the house as if it still belonged to him, remote in hand, laughter filling the spaces that used to hold warmth. Every small gesture felt rehearsed, almost absurdly domestic. When he kissed me goodnight, his lips brushed mine like a politician's handshake. Performative, empty, cold. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between his breaths. The man beside me was still my husband, but emotionally he'd already left. He just didn't know I'd noticed. Morning came slow, quiet, deliberate. He asked what I'd wear for dinner, and I smiled, telling him it would be a surprise. He laughed, teasing that I was mysterious lately. I told him mystery suits a marriage. He didn't get the irony, of course. I watched him tie his shoes, grab his keys, kiss my cheek. His cologne lingered after he left, but now I recognized it for what it was: cover scent for guilt. I poured my coffee and whispered, "Tomorrow, you'll choke on your own lies." The rest of the day, I rehearsed my calm. I ironed a dress, booked the dinner reservation, and checked that every file, every photo, was safely stored. My phone felt heavier in my hand, like justice disguised as a device. By sunset, the house was spotless. No trace of lipstick, no scarf, no evidence left but my resolve. I looked at my reflection and smiled. Tomorrow wasn't just dinner. It was closure, plated and served. And he'd have no idea he was on the menu. The restaurant glowed softly under amber lights, the kind that make everything look warmer than it really is. I'd chosen it carefully, elegant, intimate, with windows that reflected the city lights just enough to blur the truth. Adam arrived first, looking nervous in that subtle way men do when they sense something's off but can't name it. I walked in wearing red lipstick, her shade. The host smiled, guiding me to our table. The click of my heels echoed like punctuation marks on a closing sentence. He stood up when he saw me. "Wow," he said, eyes wide. "You look amazing tonight." I smiled politely, sitting down. I wanted to look my best, for this. He chuckled, still pretending we were fine. The candle between us flickered, casting his reflection across the glass. I watched him pick up the menu, as if small talk could still save him. I didn't want to ruin the performance too early. Every actor deserves their final line. I let the waiter pour the wine before I spoke. "Adam," I said gently, "there's something I'd like you to see." He blinked, confused. "What's this about?" I placed my phone on the table, pressed play. The video glowed against his face, him opening our front door, kissing her, welcoming her in. His color drained faster than the wine in his glass. "Sophia, Don't," I said. My voice was calm, cold, final. "You already explained everything, with coffee and lipstick." He froze, the fork still in his hand, his mouth slightly open but empty of words. I watched him struggle, reaching for excuses that no longer existed. The candlelight flickered against his trembling jaw. "It's not what it looks like," he started, the oldest line in the book. I leaned back, studying him like a stranger caught lying on camera. "You're right," I said softly. "It's worse." His lips parted again, but no sound came. The truth was finally louder than him. I reached into my bag and slid a white envelope across the table. The paper whispered against the linen, clean, deliberate, inevitable. He stared at it, hesitant. "What's this?" he asked, though he already knew. "Divorce papers," I replied. "Signed, filed, and reviewed by your boss's wife. She's my lawyer." His eyes widened. "You... what?" I smiled, almost kindly. "She found your after-hours teamwork fascinating. You might want to prepare for a different kind of meeting on Monday." The waiter came by to refill the water glasses, oblivious to the battlefield laid out between us. I thanked him politely. Adam just stared at me, pale and shaking, his facade collapsing like wet paper. I stood, smoothing my dress. "Next time you lie," I whispered, leaning close enough for him to smell the same lipstick that had betrayed him. "At least wash the cups." I left a few bills for my meal, turned toward the door, and felt the night air greet me like freedom itself. Outside, the city pulsed with quiet life. Couples laughing, cabs rushing by, the hum of music spilling from open doors. I stood there for a moment, letting the cool air bite my skin. My hands didn't tremble. my heart didn't race. I expected anger, maybe tears, but all I felt was release. It was strange how peace could feel so weighty, like setting down something heavy you'd been carrying so long you'd forgotten the ache it caused. Through the restaurant window, I saw him still sitting there, staring at the empty chair across from him. He looked smaller now, like the room had grown too big for him. For years, I had made myself smaller so he could feel like more. Tonight, the scale finally tipped back to truth. The city lights reflected on the glass, and for the first time, I liked what I saw. A woman who had stopped apologizing for noticing the obvious. As I walked away, my heels clicking against the pavement, I realized I didn't need revenge to feel victorious. What I needed was distance, and I was already creating it, one step at a time. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I didn't look. Whatever he had left to say, I'd already heard it all in the silence that followed his lies. The night didn't just end a marriage, it reclaimed me. And for once, the quiet felt like closure. By Monday morning, the gossip had already taken shape. Faster, sharper, more merciless than truth itself. I didn't need to say a word. The video spoke for me. His office became a stage for whispers, pitying glances and awkward silences that greeted him instead of respect. The woman, his co-worker, resigned quietly before the end of the week. And Adam, once the golden boy, suddenly found his halo made of rust. Watching his world crumble from afar didn't bring joy exactly. It brought balance. I spent those days packing my things, one memory at a time. Every photo, every glass, every small domestic lie we'd built together. There's a strange peace in dismantling what once defined you. The walls of our house no longer echoed with laughter or deceit, just emptiness. I left him the furniture, the dishes, the same table where I found the lipstick. He could keep the ghosts. I was done being haunted. What I wanted couldn't be boxed or divided. It was silence and freedom. The new apartment was smaller but bright. I painted the walls myself, cream, not white. White reminded me too much of napkins and stains. The morning smelled like coffee again, only this time it was mine alone. I'd wake up, open the curtains, and feel the sun hit my face without guilt attached to it. The bed felt bigger, the air lighter. It's incredible how peaceful solitude can be once you stop mistaking it for loneliness. A few weeks later, Claire called, her voice full of cautious curiosity. "So," she asked, "how's freedom treating you?" I laughed, a genuine sound this time, not the brittle kind that used to fill our kitchen. "It tastes like fresh coffee," I said, glancing at the cup in my hand, "and no red stains." She paused, then smiled through the phone. "You sound lighter." I was. Every breath I took now felt earned. Every quiet morning, sacred. Healing, I learned, doesn't roar. It whispers. Sometimes I'd pass by the cafe near my new place, small, warm, always playing soft jazz. The barista learned my order by heart. 1 coffee, no sugar, porcelain cup. I'd sit by the window, notebook open, jotting thoughts instead of suspicions. The hum of conversation, the clink of cups, they no longer hurt. They reminded me that life continues, even after betrayal. The world doesn't pause for heartbreak. It just changes the rhythm. Mine, finally, had found its tempo again. Occasionally, I'd catch myself staring at couples, wondering if they were honest, if they truly knew the person across the table. But instead of bitterness, I felt empathy. Not everyone wears deceit as carelessly as Adam did. Some people still mean what they say, and maybe someday I'd trust that again. But for now, I didn't need anyone else at my table. 1 cup was enough. 1 truth. 1 peace. The kind that doesn't need proving anymore. One afternoon, as the rain drizzled against my window, I caught myself smiling for no reason. Not the kind of smile you wear for others, the quiet one that sneaks up when your heart finally unclenches. I brewed my coffee, slow and deliberate, letting the aroma fill the small apartment. It smelled like closure. I thought about how something as simple as a cup could hold so much history. Deceit, discovery, and now, peace. The same act that once shattered me had become my daily ritual of calm. News of Adam reached me occasionally through mutual friends, his demotion, his divorce settlement, the silence that followed. I didn't gloat. Karma didn't need an audience. I'd already gotten my justice the moment I walked away. Revenge, I learned, doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just lives well. Sometimes it simply drinks coffee in the morning without flinching. That was my triumph. Not his ruin, but my release. I'd traded bitterness for clarity, and it suited me better. One evening, I watched the sun dip below the skyline, the city glowing like forgiveness in slow motion. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number, no message. I smiled faintly, turned it face down, and took another sip. The taste was perfect, warm, untainted. Freedom didn't look like I imagined. It felt better. It was simple, clean, honest. And as I leaned back in my chair, I knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of me. Months passed before his name appeared on my phone again. A single message that read, "I miss you. I made a mistake." I stared at it longer than I should have, not out of longing, but disbelief that he still didn't understand. Mistakes are accidents. What he did was a choice. I didn't reply. I simply deleted it, just like I'd scrubbed his scent from the sheets, his echoes from my home. Some things don't deserve a response. Silence, I'd learned, is its own form of punctuation. I poured myself another cup of coffee, one cup, mine alone, and watched the morning light dance across the rim. The world outside was alive again, noisy and unpredictable, but my little space remained still, peaceful. I'd spent years adjusting my heartbeat to someone else's rhythm. Now, it finally matched my own. Freedom wasn't loud or cinematic. It was the quiet click of a message deleted, the steady warmth of coffee cooling beside an open window. As the sun rose higher, I whispered to the air, half smiling. 2 cups were never the problem. The wrong person was. I leaned back, savoring the taste. No bitterness, no residue. Just truth. The city hummed below, indifferent and perfect. I realized then that love doesn't die when betrayal ends. It simply changes direction. Mine had finally turned inward. And as I watched the light flood the room, I knew. The cups were clean, and so was I.